Hey, it's George, and the Metro-Plex is here. This is production amp number 001, and it is shipping this week. So the Metro-Plex has arrived, and as such, I'd like to discuss some of the features and a little bit about why I designed things the way that I did. The tonal heart of this amp is the Plexi mode, and that's based on my 6800 watt Superlead and my old basket weave cabinet with G12Ms. So with all the EQs straight up and down, EQ all at noon, the gain is about 7 or 8, and the master will vary of course, but that is the overall voicing of my 68 Superlead. And from there, of course, things just get hairier. So we'll start with the Plexi mode, and from there you go into modded mode, which is not a drastic kind of a mod, but it's a like a tweaked, like a Plexi with a little extra balls, a little extra hair on top. You can switch between the modes using a foot switch, so you go between Plexi and mod mode. And take a little listen. This is Plexi mode. And this is the mod mode. Plexi mode. Mod mode. So you can hear that in the modded mode. It gets a little more compressed, a little darker, but a little sustainier. There's definitely more gain. And I should mention too that the amount of gain that my old amp has, you're going to get in Plexi mode with the gain control about 8 o'clock. So everything up from 8 to 10 is more, extra gain compared to the old one. Something else that was important to me that this amp did is that in the Plexi mode, when you turn the gain down, you still have a lot of usable tones. So if you want to get those kind of in between or light overdrive things, get the gain back around 5. Still usable, still sustaining. It still feels like a great old amp underneath your fingers. And you can take it right back too. So this is just with a gain on 2. In addition to the modes, you've got a built-in boost circuit, and this is a high voltage FET for clean boost right off the input jack of the amp. So when the boost is off, straight to the first gain stage, no solid state in the signal path. When you turn the boost on, then you get the high voltage FET. And so you've got 22 dBs of clean gain on tap. If you turn the boost gain control all the way counterclockwise, it's unity gain. So if you just want the amp to be louder but no extra gain, turn this all the way down and it just gets louder. And from there, as you turn it up, it just gets nastier and nastier and devilish. We're using a 3-button foot switch. So the first switch controls the boost on and off. The second switch is the mode between plexi and mod mode. And the third switch is for the loop. You can switch the zero loss effects loop in and out of the circuit with a foot switch. And that loop also is adjustable between line level and pedal level. There's a switch on the back of the amp. So if you're playing and you want some effect, so simple as that. You can put a delay. I've got a Wampler analog echo in the loop. Just turning it on with a foot switch. So I tweaked the EQ circuit quite a bit, and it behaves different than a typical Marshall or Plexi does. What you're going to find is that on an old amp, the middle control a lot of times is effectively a gain control. On this amp, it's not. It's much more focused in a band of mid-range frequencies, and I tried to voice it so that if you plug into different speaker cabinets, that you can use the mid control to kind of bring in and out the sort of the woodiness or the real kind of the vocal kind of a cabinet frequencies. It's hard to describe, but when you hear it, you'll understand. So it's centered right on a real sort of vocal kind of a frequency. And also, since the mid-range is more focused, then the treble control is more effective, and it behaves like a proper treble control. Now, this EQ is intended to be used a lot like you would use an old Plexi, and so don't be surprised if you find yourself really cranking the controls to get all the gain and the snarl, really. Once again, it's hard to describe, but when you hear it, you'll understand. And so a lot of the sweep of the treble control happens kind of between 5 and 10. also with the bass control, I tried to really focus that frequency-wise where you'll get the most use out of it with your typical 75 hertz or 55 hertz resonant speakers and cabinets. So it does what it's supposed to. Enough said. So the presence circuit also is tweaked a bit, and my thought on this was you're going to plug this head into a variety of different cabinets or find it in different scenarios, and the presence really should do what it says, what the name implies. Bring the sort of the tone, the sound closer to you, or cut through more on a loud stage. And so hopefully this will do that. You'll see it goes from really dark with it down to really kind of overly present and bright with it all the way up, as you would expect. But hopefully in a more musical way than your typical presence circuit. And if you were plugged into a dark cabinet, you could bring the presence up and get it to cut. And if you were playing through, say, vintage 30s, which have a lot of sort of 4K going on already, then you could cut it back a little bit with the presence and still maintain a nice balanced tone. So that's the EQ section. The only other thing I would say is that if you want to do your imitation Vox thing, you can dime the mids, cut all the treble, most of the bass, kind of presence to taste, get the gain up, and do your kind of imitation Vox thing. Okay, so in the cabinet I've got Celestion Creamback H speakers. So this is the heavy magnet. And in general I found while tweaking the tone of the amp that I like the heavy magnet speakers better. So the next feature is the Variac switch. Now in the up position everything operates normally, high voltage. When you switch it down, it drops the high voltage in the amp about 100 volts, and it also biases the tubes hotter. And so you're trading off some headroom with the lower voltage, and then when you bias the tubes hotter, then you get some touch sensitivity and a really kind of an interesting compression that's going on. So it's not like a night and day over the top kind of a difference, but when you go back and forth between the two, you'll hear the difference. The volume drops a little, and it feels a little different to play. And the Variac mode, it just makes you kind of want to dig in and play hard, and just gets a little sleazier. Around the back of the amp, we've got a 50 watt / 100 watt switch. So you can take two tubes out by flipping the switch. Also adjust the bias just a little bit, just to keep things optimal. So you can kill about 3 decibels by hitting the switch. But it also sounds a little different and feels a little different. So now we're in 50 watt mode and we're in the variac setting. So everything's kind of getting squishy and nice and compressed, real juicy. And what you find is that the master volume is very effective, and you can get right down to just whisper sort of levels. And the amp doesn't lose its feel. It still feels like you're playing an amp, and it doesn't fall apart tonally. It stays balanced and real kind of juicy and sustaining. No reason you can't use this for any size gig, or right down to your playing in your bedroom while the baby's asleep in the next room. Like J.D. Simo was so kind to show us, is that the low input jack has a lot of great usable tones too. It's all the same features and functions, it's just a little less aggressive. It pulls it back a little bit. Lots of classic tones in there. And of course, if you're in the low jack, pull the gain back a bit and crank the master up. It's going to act like an old non-master volume amp. JD covered that better than I could ever hope to, so we'll just default to that video for those functions. Okay, lastly, just for fun, we got the old Superlead half stack plugged in and the headmaster wired up, so it's a little bit of hum from the ground loop, but we'll go back and forth, and I'll start with the old plexi. That's not fair. So take a listen how they clean up, how similar.